glad to have you here along with Michigan's retirement coach, certified financial planner, Mike Douglas. You can begin the conversation about your own retirement savings and investments and the plans that you need to put around those savings and investments. Find us at michigansretirementcoach.com. We also have links posted in the show notes, so you can just click there. No matter if you're watching or listening, should we go ahead and address the not the elephant in the room, but the leaf blower in the room that's occurring today?
Right outside the room. Yeah. I have wonderful people who take care of our properties, and they just leaf blowing right outside the studio right now.
Right when we were getting ready to start recording. Just
I appreciate their hard work. They're out here just grinding. I appreciate it.
It's just
right
the time.
during podcast time.
Right, I mean, great. Like right as we were getting ready to start, they just
it's been silent for 45 minutes around here. It's good.
Well, come along with us as we share insight on how to do better with your money, along with the soundtrack that is.
That's right.
The season. 'Tis the season for leaf blowers abound.
Yes.
Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel as well. Just search Michigan's Retirement Coach on YouTube, and you can find us there. All right. So, I'm not going to be able to not laugh throughout this whole conversation with the leaf blowers.
Yeah.
It actually became a big conversation in 2020 because, everybody was working from home. So every conversation that we had on the internet, via Teams or whatever, Zoom that you used, mind the leaf blowers and all the pets that we used to watch.
Yeah. There became a lot more grace post 2020 for the chaos.
I think
it's reality. It's life.
I think that there is still tolerance for chaos. We are all surrounded. You know what? We're all in it together. The chaos of the world. Come on in, everybody.
So we were talking before this about how we used to record things on Mondays. Yeah. And the lawn company took care of stuff on Mondays. So it was always an issue. So we moved it to Wednesday. And then the lawn care company switched, and they then started working on Wednesdays. So now we're back here recording on a Monday. And
guess what?
They're out here doing fall cleanup on a Monday.
Well, because this Wednesday is Thanksgiving. We're recording this the week of Thanksgiving. So they're probably working ahead so that people can be with their families. So kudos to you, Mr. Lawn Service people.
Thank you for taking care of our property and making it look very nice.
Let's talk about the work that you do at this office that looks very lovely thanks to the lawn service folks. And specifically the notion, a circumstance that we're actually in, have been in, will be in for the foreseeable future, this thing called the Great Wealth Transfer. Over the next 20 years, about $84 trillion
with a T.
will be passed. That's right, trillion with a T. Hey, there's the answer to our nation's debt problem. No, jokes. Don't get any ideas, government.
Oh, they're working on it.
I know they are. 84 trillion will be passed down to the next generation. Meanwhile, this is something else we were talking about before we started recording today, and I loved this, and I was laughing. We're turning the mirror right around on you, Mr. Michigan's retirement coach, and all financial advisors, because a new study is giving many advisors reasons to worry. One, when a spouse dies and the money is then passed along to the surviving spouse, the advisor of that person loses that client. So loses the surviving spouse as a client about 22% of the time. Then when both partners are gone and the money goes to the kids, advisors lose clients 42% of the time. So almost getting close to half the time now. So Natixis is the company that did this study. They actually believe the numbers are much higher, in fact. The question for you then, again, taking the mirror, flipping around, looking at you, what are your thoughts on this? One, what are the problems that could arise for a family in circumstances like this? And how do you help them? How do you help people avoid problems from circumstances like this?
Yeah, let's start with the industry problem. So in most families, there's a spouse who does the finances or the retirement planning, and there's a spouse who does something else. Okay. Very rarely do both people have their hands in it. And that's just from my experience. You could be out there and say, we both do it. Well, then you are the anomaly. Most of the time we sit down and we talk to somebody about it and they say, oh, well, and sometimes the person who does the retirement planning is not the person who does the weekly or monthly budget.
Very often.
But someone does the investments and someone does other stuff.
Yeah.
When we were buying a car for Kimberly a couple years ago, we were going down and we found a dealership we liked. We found the car online. We did all of our research in advance, which is, what you do now. You don't just show up and get sold. You do your research and go buy the thing you planned on. So we drive to Illinois for this car that we really liked. And we pull in, and as we sit down with them, Kimberly, she stays home and has our kids, and I work. So we go through, we're buying Kimberly's car that she and I picked out together. We pull in, and as he pulls up our thing, we did the pre-financing, all that stuff. He looks and sees my name on the financing, and he basically almost does like, all right, Mike,
towards you.
Yeah. What do you want this on this car? And I said, well, Kimberly, do you want that on your car?
Yeah.
And she was like, yeah, I do want that. Okay, great. And then he goes, okay, Mike, are we going to be doing the warranty on this? And I said, hey, man.
Iced her out?
Oh, he iced her out. And I was like, hey, man, this is her car. Like, you should ask her.
Right.
He goes, I'm so sorry. And I think it's like just a bad old habit because he sees the name on the thing and he's just like, okay, well, it's Mike's financing it, whatever.
Yeah.
So then he does pretty well for a while. And then one more time he comes back and he says, Mike, do you want, I forget what, it is stuff like, do you want the WeatherTech stuff? It's nothing major. Do you want the Scotch Guard or whatever they call it now?
Yeah.
And on the third time I said, if you skip over my wife one more time, we're walking out of here. This is her car. So we drove all the way to Illinois. Don't make me drive home without a car, but we'll go with someone else or a different vehicle. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. So that's what they were doing. They're skipping over top of her. And it made me really, really mad.
Yeah.
Because it's her car. And I made it pretty clear. I'm like, well, this is her car. So ask her.
Right.
That's how people act in finances. Advisors act in finances. And it's a habit that's just a human nature habit. It's not, I think most of the time I try to think the best. It's not like a sexist thing or it's not that. Sometimes it is. Sometimes people are just jerks. But the reality is if you say, all right, like if it's the two of us, there's me and you, right? And we sit down with an advisor and they say, oh, Heather doesn't really deal with that. I deal with that. Okay, great. All right, Mike. So when you build your portfolios, what do you do? I think the conversation tends to stay that way. Okay. What we've put a very intentional effort on is, does Heather understand? Right. Does she get it? Because if the spouse who does it is in a coma, it gets really sick, and all of a sudden this other spouse has to pick up the pieces or dies, and the other spouse has to pick up the pieces, do they know, understand, and trust you to the point where they feel confident still? Or do they feel like I'm starting all over again? In the midst of the loss of a loved one, you don't want to start all over again. And so that's why we created the Other Spouse program, where everything we do in our office is built around the other spouse. Does she know? Does Kimberly know? Does Heather know? Does the other person know what's going on? In my case, it would be, does Kyle know? I'm the one that does the finances in our marriage. Yeah, absolutely. So does the other spouse who and generally if they don't have anything to do with it, it's because they want nothing to do with it. It's hard. And Kimberly's, if you don't have a mind for it, it's like, Well, and Kimberly's like, she does the kids, the house, she gets everybody to and from all the different stuff. All I have to do is the finances, and I do it for a living. It couldn't be easier, right? And so in that situation, does the other spouse feel comfortable? And we did it from a perspective of not even so much a client retention tool, but because our clients tend to be a little older. And so we deal with widows quite a bit, and we deal with widowers quite a bit. And we know what it's like to look that other person in the face and say, hey, I know this is one of the hardest times of your life. Do you understand where your finances are? And they don't. And that's a lost feeling for them. Yeah. We've been very intentional about building that part of our business. And then that was one big thing. The second big thing was building a family plan, which is, it's not a cell phone plan, but it's the model of like, when a client comes on and joins and they have a spouse and then the other spouse understands, at some point we want to have a family meeting. Now, some people say, I don't want my kids to know what I have, and that's on them. But we always encourage a family meeting, because the whole idea being, if something happens to mom and dad and the kids, do they know where to turn for this type of stuff? Do they know who to call? Do they know who's going to help them deal with this transition and all the financial things that have to happen? Right. That's why we have a family meeting, because we want the kids to know not only that mom and dad are invested appropriately for who they are and they're not getting taken by some financial advisor or someone who's selling them something, but that if something bad happens while they're in the midst of dealing with the grief of their parents passing, that someone is looking out for their best interests. So we take care of the other spouse first. We try to hold family meetings whenever possible, even if it's digitally, and encourage children or other people to be involved as much as the parents want. Yeah. That helps kind of the whole family thing. Because when you save money and you work over the years to put money in your pocket and to save for your retirement and for you and your spouse, and then you pass, you don't want the kids to waste it away because they don't know the long-term goals, or just to maybe make some decisions that don't align with your core values. So that's one of the reasons why we have the family meeting. What is the long-term goal of the money? But for those inheriting the money, a lot of people, this is a big chunk, a chunk they've never had to deal with. As your parents pass and they leave you $2 million. Yeah. Most 40 to 45-year-olds aren't like, oh, I'll just add it to my other millions. You know, they have to learn how to use this now because your whole financial picture completely changed. And that's why we want to have these family meetings and help people understand. We have legacy events where we just educate children and grandchildren on how to save money, how to invest money, and how to live out a legacy of familial wealth. Okay. We did have one client who came in. He came in, he had been with an advisor for about 20 years. Mm-hmm. And he was kind of going through this process of like, I feel like there's something missing. And he has a son, a wonderful guy who also is in like the finance realm, but he's more of like a bookkeeper for companies. Okay. And so he says, you know, I'm going to have him jump on these calls while we go through so I understand. Now, his son lived on the West Coast. He lives here in Michigan. So we start having these meetings. And really the whole goal of the son being there was just to help the dad understand and also help the dad be protected against being sold something. And so we went through this process, and it was great because every time we walked through things, the son had great questions the dad wouldn't ask, and the dad had great questions the son wouldn't ask. And so working through this process with them, it was a familial decision. So when it came time, then we would meet with them, and then they'd go meet offline and talk about it. Then we'd come back together, then they'd go meet offline. So by the time that he decided to work with us as a firm, it was a family decision. And we went through all these things. So now it's funny, even since then, the son is working with us, the sister, the daughter's working with us. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of growth that's happened in that space because we invested in multiple generations. Okay. The reason advisors invest so much time in the older generation is because they have the money. Right. Right. So you try to make the short-term grab at the money now. And we have clients who are older. So I get that. But to not invest the time into those who will receive it.
Right. Just the point of this is the transfer that's happening. $84 trillion are going to the next generation. And that was something that you had said to me before. There is a bigger conversation that is not being had about, okay, yes, there's the people that are leaving the money. But what about the people that are receiving the money? Because a lot of these people, as our parents and grandparents, thankfully, are living longer. I mean, your grandfather is still alive and kicking.
94.
So people that are receiving this money are in their 50s and 60s getting ready to retire themselves.
Yep.
That's another conversation that you're having.
Well, and their investments will be different than the ones they inherit. I mean, if you're a 40 to 50-year-old and you inherit money from a 70-year-old, your portfolio is going to look different. Yep. If you're a 50, 60-year-old, you inherit from an 80-year-old, your portfolio is going to look different because now you're at a different phase of life than they are. And so just to not prepare both ends for that, it just seems foolish to me. Right. There's the business owner side, if we can be completely transparent about it, right? Like, so the business owner side says, well, I already worked to acquire this client, right? We put out money, or we put time investment, and we brought on this client, and a lot of trust is extended from that client to us, and we created a relationship. That person passes. Do I want to then go have to put all that same time and energy into creating a new relationship with a new client, no relationship? Or should I be investing time and energy into the child of that client? That way, when something happens, we already have connection and relationships. So there's a business owner side, which is, hey, listen, we already worked really hard to bring on Heather. We wanted her to be a great client. So now we just invest some more time into that family, deepen the relationship. That way, if something happens to Heather and it goes on, oh, great. Well, then we've now expanded that, and we don't have to go find a new client. We get to keep the same family involved. Yeah. When you work with people viewing them as a family, not a client. Yeah. It deepens the relationships a little bit. And it also gives you a perspective of, this isn't a 10 to 20 year thing. I'm 41. I'm going to be in this thing for another 20, 25 years. And my goal is to get my kids involved. So in theory, this could be a 40 to 50 year business relationship. As long as we do our job, we hold up our end, the client stays happy, the children stay happy. It's a whole different thought than saying, well, what can we sell to then do A, B, C, D? That's the kind of the mentality. I try to encourage people to do a lot of research and to figure these things out on their end. What makes the most sense for both the gifter and the gifted, the inheritor and the inherited, all those things. Like, we want to be making multi-generational money last a long time. If you work hard and save a couple $1 million and you pass on to your kids, don't let them, waste it away, but have a family meeting to help them understand. That's kind of the notorious thing about the Vanderbilts. Cornelius Vanderbilt did all this stuff to acquire all this money. He sold his ships, built railroads, did all these things. Yeah. And then as soon as the money got to the next generations, it just started getting depleted quickly. Because he never taught them. Didn't have conversations. He's building businesses and never built financial intelligence in his children. It's an interesting story if you research the Vanderbilt children. Okay. But Yeah, that's what we want to do, is just protect everything you've done and just educate people on the front end. That's why on our website, Michigan's Retirement Coach, there's a button that says start your retirement roadmap today. That conversation can go two ways. It can either be for the one who is going to be leaving money and saying, hey, I'd like to understand the best, make sure I'm set up the right way so I don't give away money to taxes or probate or whatever. But there's also the conversation that is the younger side, was saying, hey, I'm set to inherit some money and I want to understand how to do this the right way. I don't want to make some mistakes. I don't want to put it in the wrong type of account and lose money to taxes or the government. Can someone help me understand how to deal with this when it comes? And we have those conversations too. So michigansretirementcoach.com, start your retirement roadmap. Click on that. We'll have a conversation, or just subscribe to this content. Stay plugged into what we're doing, because we're trying to make sure that you have the information, the education to make the right decisions. And that's why we're here.
You can subscribe to our YouTube channel. That's how you can get this content that we're posting and putting out every week. Just search Michigan's Retirement Coach on YouTube. We also have links posted in the show notes, so you can just click there to head to our website, which is, again, michigansretirementcoach.com.